Yeah.
I'm just going to hold it. Everybody else is under control.
Okay, Eric, I'm good on that. Are we good?
Give us 1 second.
I know, isn't this fun?
No, you can read it down low.
My mic? Just yell at me, sorry. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Do you mind starting with your name, say it, spell
Sure,
it?
Jerry Buting, Jerrybuting.
Why are you here?
I've been involved with the case for 10 years. I studied the interrogation of Brendan so carefully. I was so offended by it for so long before the rest of the world got to see what really went on. How, as Judge Wood said today, that when she saw that video, it made her skin crawl, and that's the way it made it affected me when I saw it too. What they did to Brendan Dassey is inexcusable. They knew that they were dealing with a learning disabled child. The questions that they started off asking when he was, I believe it was the first recorded interview, they start off asking him questions like he's a child. Do you know the difference between right and wrong? Do you know what a lie is? Tell me what the truth is. If I say I'm wearing a red sweater, those kinds of questions. I've never seen an adult question like that. So they knew that they were dealing with somebody who had learning disabilities, and they took advantage of this kid.
Well, do you think that anything that Brendan said was true?
No. Quite frankly, no. Everything was made up or fed to him.
What kind of read did you get from the panel of judges today?
I can't handicap, what's going to happen here. I mean, obviously, there were 3 very active judges with questioning that seemed very troubled about it. But there's complicated issues. There's also ineffective assistance of counsel, where Lynn Kaczynski, as one judge put it, essentially was acting as a representative of the victim's family, so that there would be a conflict of interest. And I think that's still a very serious issue that has to be decided.
What does this mean for Steve Avery?
I'm
sorry?
How are they supposed to interrogate someone? I mean, Judge Sykes said that they asked, then we're rewriting the law. How soon you've been here?
The police are trained, even as part of the Reed technique. They're trained to be very cautious when they're dealing with people who have mental limitations or mental illness of some sort. It's part of their training. They know how to question and how not to question. And they are supposed to be very, very cautious when they're dealing with somebody who has those kinds of limitations. They didn't do that here, even though they knew they were dealing with an individual who had those kind of limitations. So it's not like this is going to make new law. This is really a fact-specific case. What did they do to Brendan, and was what they did to Brendan coercive? And I think it was. We'll have to see.
They never really raised their voices to it. What are those tactics that they're supposed to use to enable them to...
The belief that you have to yell and, pound the table in order to be coercive is a complete myth. Study after study after study shows that psychological techniques, in fact, they're taught through the Reed technique, they're taught to use more psychological techniques that are going to gain the trust of the suspect. They crossed the line here, I think, by making him promises, starting right off. This didn't come up today, but at the very beginning of the interrogation, they tell Brendan, look, there are people back in the police department and the DA's office who think we should charge you already. We're good guys. We're holding those people back. And you can make it look however you want, but we know there's more involved here. And so they start off with that veiled threat that he could be charged if he doesn't cooperate. And then they go from there with these promises that we'll go to bat for you and that we'll, honesty will set you free and on and on and on, giving him the impression that all he has to do is tell them a story they like, and then he can go home. And he clearly was under that misapprehension even after he'd come out with the statement that he did. And said, can I get back to school now? I have a project due in fifth period or whatever.
So what does Brendan Dassey's case mean for Stephen Avery's case?
You know, that's going to be up to Stephen's lawyer. I don't know. I mean, clearly, yes, they did not use Brendan's confession at Stephen's trial, but there's no question that the jury was aware of it and the jury was influenced by it. It was planted in their minds by Ken Kratz during the press conference that he gave, and then it was repeated over and over and over by you guys. Not any of your fault. You know, at one point there was in essence, a gag order saying don't talk anymore, and so you were left reporting the same version of events that was false, and didn't even know until the trial came out that there was no evidence to corroborate it. There was no blood in the trailer. There were no scratch marks on the headboard from somebody struggling who was shackled with handcuffs. None of that evidence was presented to you guys, and none of that evidence was ever presented in the public's mind, from which we had to pick jurors for Stephen Avery's case. Whether that ultimately will have an effect now in Stephen's case, I don't know. That's going to be up to his new attorney, Kathleen Zellner, to figure out how to use that.
Can you spell your title for those who know it here for 10 years?
Well, I was one of Stephen Avery's attorneys at the trial, and I was very much involved in analyzing Brendan's confession because we didn't know whether Brendan's confession was going to be used at Stephen's trial. We were ready for it if it did. We were ready to show the jury that it was false and that it was basically disproving all the physical evidence. But they didn't ultimately use it at his trial. They tried to use it at his sentencing. And that's when we filed a sentencing motion and laid all of this out, including presenting DVDs. Nobody's actually saw, even his own jury, Brendan's jury, never saw his full interrogation. The state objected to any of the earlier ones. The February 27th or 28th interrogations were never presented to his jury. So all of the things about Brendan were, we're police officers, but not right now. I'm a father with a 16-year-old just like you. I know you're hurting and I want to give you a hug and all of that stuff. Brendan's jury never heard. So to say that they looked at this and decided and this was a jury question, it's really unfair because they did not see the totality of the circumstances of his confession.
Do you continue to have contact with Steve Avery?
Pardon me?
Do you still have contact with Steve Avery?
Not directly. He's represented by counsel, so he can't.
You can't have a personal relationship?
You can't have a one-on-one. You cannot speak to a represented party who has another attorney. So we don't.
And have you been working with Mrs. Zellner?
We've cooperated in any way we can, yes.
And talk a little bit about, because of course, as you know, part of what's gone on was Stephen's alleged that you guys didn't work hard enough for him and, made his attempt at ineffective assistance. Talk about that. I mean, obviously you've taken you've gotten a lot of attention for your hard work and have been lauded for it, and then to hear the guy that you worked so hard for say, you didn't work hard enough. What's that?
I don't take that personally at all. I mean, he's the guy who's sitting in prison. I understand he's frustrated. I understand that he feels like he's not gotten a fair shake because he hasn't. This poor guy has been wrongly convicted twice. And, from his perspective in prison, he I'm sure would hope that we had done enough that he would actually have won the trial, not lost. And so do I. Look, we're human beings. If there's something that we missed that's significant, I'm sure it'll be considered, and I'll certainly be honest about it. This was a massive case file. I've already said publicly that, I've seen things that Redditors have been able to glean from the record that I didn't. Whether all of that or any of that is significant enough or would have made a difference in the trial, I don't know. But, this is I don't take offense at all if Stephen is disappointed in us. I'm disappointed that we didn't win, and I always will be.
Do you
agree, or do you feel that you didn't investigate Ryan Hillegas enough, as Kathleen Zellner has claimed in her brief?
You know, we'll have to talk about her specific allegations when we get a hearing. I don't want to comment on those now because that's something that I'm sure will be part of testimony. You know, I can say in general, whenever there's a homicide like this and someone is charged, the victim's family and friends tend to close ranks, and so that's difficult to get much information out of them. That's why it's so important that the police do that, because the police are in a position where they can get people to talk, you know, ex-boyfriends, boyfriends, husbands, check out their alibis, those kinds of things. That's what the police should do and didn't do in this case.
Well, she's not saying that blood is from 2005. Do you buy that?
I don't know. You know, I'm not going to comment directly on what her conclusions are that she's raised in the motion. We'll have to deal with that in court too.
What happens next as far as the legal process goes here?
Well, the court has to decide and issue an opinion, and that could take, you know, a couple of months. It's hard to say. And you know, whichever side loses is probably going to try and petition the U.S. Supreme Court to hear it as well.
What is it like when the Supreme Court actually hear it though? I know it's a very small percentage.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is an important case, obviously, because of its exposure worldwide. That may play a role in whether they decide to take the case, but it may not. I can't handicap that either.
Can something happen to the interrogators though? This goes in what direction?
Well, what should happen is the police should stop doing this, period. It's time that it ends. And we, in fact, as members of the public, can demand that it ends. We should have we can pass a law that says interrogators are not to lie to suspects. The rest of the English-speaking world has already done that. We are the outliers that still allow these antiquated, dangerous police interrogation techniques that have already been shown to have a higher incidence of false confession than the rest of the world uses. So, you know, it's a matter of if the police won't do it voluntarily, then the citizens can say, we demand it. And they can ask their legislators, as happened here in Illinois, where they have changed the law now to make it impossible or to prohibit questioning of 15 or under without a lawyer present, and in serious cases like homicides or sexual assaults. You know, those protections can be instituted by the citizens if they want. All right?
Thank you very much.
Sure. You're welcome.
Emily, is Ray still here?
No, he left to see if they could train.
Oh.
That's fine.
Are you I haven't seen them yet.
Okay, so we're waiting to see if the state of Wisconsin, the Attorney General, is going to comment, and I'm not sure he is, so I don't know. But we're waiting to see if the Attorney General is going to comment. We don't know if he has come down yet. So yeah, we're just waiting. We're just hanging out to see whether or not they have a comment on the hearing. It was actually very interesting. I'm glad I came to watch it in person. We'll post the links online when they're ready. But yeah, it was fascinating. It was a fascinating hearing. So I'll show you just kind of the media, the scrum, as some people like to call us. But I'll show you kind of here's what's going on. So a lot of cameras, a lot of interest in this. There are even Chicago television stations here, so you know that people are interested. It's not just in Wisconsin or overseas. This case is pretty important. Also, Brendan Dassey's attorneys are from Northwestern University, which is here in Chicago. So obviously there's going to be some local interest in that from the local stations. Oh, here's somebody getting ready to do a live shot. No, Brendan was not in the courtroom today. He was not here. There's really no no reason for him to be transported for this hearing.
I'm just going to go outside and find everything else. See if you shoot.
Yeah, I guess I'll come back on, guys, if there's going to be a press conference from the Attorney General, but I'm running out of juice here. No, it was WGN. So I don't know what channel they are, but they're just WGN. So I'll come back on. Brendan Dassey's attorneys are not commenting. They said they needed some time, some space in between this hearing. So I will log back on if the AG says anything.